back, relax. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another happy hour episode brought to you by NAAP, the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to build unity in the adoption community and elevate our diverse voices by promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connection. My name is Marcie Keithley. I'm a board member and the host for the evening, along with some fellow board members here tonight, Jennifer Falsing, David Bowl. Let me check and see who else is with us right now. Okay, that's all I see at this time. If you haven't already, please place yourselves on mute. Feel free to say hello in the chat bar, and we have a little disclaimer here. Raise your hand on the screen to be recognized if you have a question. You can post questions and comments in the chat room. This is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and shared on our YouTube channel. If you're experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional, or you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Okay. Again, welcome. What I'd like to do first is go ahead and let's introduce our spotlight guest, Astrid Castro, and let's just learn a little bit about her. She does have a degree in sociology with an emphasis in adoption. For 20 plus years, she has traveled the country to lead youth groups, present workshops on transracial parenting, talking with children about adoption, and various other workshops focusing on adoption. Prior to creating Adoption Mosaic, Astrid worked in both the private and public sectors of various adoption organizations. She's co-authored Adoption in the Movies, which takes the reader on a guided tour of 27 movies and documentaries that encourage the viewer to engage in ongoing dialogue and discussion. So please join me in welcoming Astrid. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Hello.
So great to see you. We've had this on the calendar for how long?
Months. I think we were at the end of this summer, we were talking about doing this, and I was honored. So yeah.
We're so glad to have you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would love to just do so most of what you read is, and that's what kind of is on my website and what's public for our community, and my personal, what brought me here personally is obviously I'm an adoptee, and aside from being the director and founder of Adoption Mosaic, I immigrated to the United States in 1974 from Bucaramanga, Colombia. And I came here in way of international adoption. And, it's interesting. I'm kind of this idea of being an immigrant is something that I've been grappling or trying to unpack or understand, because so many of us international adoptees don't come into this country with the understanding that we are immigrants. And when you ask an adoptee, an international adoptee, if they identify as an immigrant, many of us just kind of pause and kind of say, cock our head and say, what? I was adopted. And yet that's something that I think we should be having more conversations about. So that's something that is really of interest to me, and having more conversations around those kind of things. My biological sister and I came to the United States, and we're biological sisters. Sisters who feel very differently about where our status in adoption land. My sister is not someone who is public or very open about her adoption, and yet that's my work and what I do on a daily basis. So navigating siblings and sibling relationships and the dynamics of that is something else that I think we should create more space to discuss. And then adoptive parents who, like my parents, they're here in the audience. They've been actually Chris and Norm. They've been attending lots of We the Experts and attend my workshops. And and so forth. I am so grateful to them for their openness and their openness to evolve and change and make space to have some of these really hard conversations. I don't think I would be the professional that I am if I didn't have parents who were allowing me and making space for me to kind of ask those hard questions that so many of us never have been given space as children to ask. And so I'm grateful for that. In addition, my daughter is here in the audience. At least it's and her name is Maya, and her tile says Maya. So if it's not my daughter, I just sent you a private message saying hello, baby girl. So if you're not my daughter and your name happens to be Maya, my apologies. um, but and that is, she's 18, she's off in college. And there's another topic that is rarely discussed, and that is the experience of being a child of an adoptee, and what that experience is for them. And so these are just all these things that have been part of my personal life that I carry into the work that I do, but also finding that balance between being a professional and having privacy. And so when your work, I mean, Marcie, you know, the work that you're doing, it's really similar in the book that you've written and so forth, right? We put ourselves out there, and we at some point we do have to really evaluate what part of our lives is private and what part is public. And we don't get a lot of practice seeing how that's modeled in our industry. So I appreciate for this opportunity for you to create that and invite me here.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your personal story and where you just got to where you are, and all about Adoption Mosaic. I know there's probably several, well, more than several people here with us this evening that you've interviewed. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, well, my personal experience is, like I said, I was adopted from Colombia. I was 4.5. My sister was 6 years old. We came to the United States. And so we were, when you think of a 4.5 and a 6-year-old, we were active and speaking, had lots to say, and we spoke Spanish. We only spoke Spanish when we arrived, and our parents had my dad likes to tell a story of running around with a dictionary trying to figure out what it was that we were saying. And yet there's, you know, we just had a panel recently on adoption and humor, and navigating when is something funny and when is it not. And I'll say that story right there has both, right? Like I can't even imagine parents running around with the dictionary trying, and like the idea and the image of that is actually really funny. And yet when you think about a 4.5 and 6-year-old and the trauma that has just happened, and getting on a plane and coming to the United States and meeting these adults in their life that have not been given the tools and the resources of what it meant to adopt children from another country. The tragedy of that is not funny at all, right? And yet sometimes we have to laugh at the absurdity of certain things, of like, all right, we made it work. Somehow we made it work. Parents didn't get the resources and the tools. Nobody told them, hey, guess what? These kids, you need to know enough Spanish to be able to help them through some of these traumas. And if that had been the case, we probably wouldn't have been placed with them. They wouldn't have been able to learn Spanish quick enough to have us be placed with them, right? And so my sister and I, we had each other, so we held on to Spanish a bit longer than we would have if we had been individually adopted or separated. And so our mom, she has said stories about how they, at the very beginning, when we first arrived, had hired a nanny who was a Spanish speaking nanny to help translate. And the social worker that came and did the follow-up, 3-month or 2-month, whatever follow-up, said that they needed to let that nanny go, because they needed to make sure that we spoke English in time to start kindergarten, and that was really important. And it was the times, and it was, and the part of that story that I really love is that my parents, their intuition was on track as far as, oh, we should have somebody here who will help translate that for them and with us, and that might help with attachment and bonding and all of these things, and then yet the professionals in their life said, no, don't do it that way, and so we didn't have the nanny anymore, and she wasn't there to help translate. So we used Maria from Sesame Street. I thought for a while that maybe she was my birth mother because she was the only person who spoke Spanish. And if all of you remember Maria from Sesame Street, and she used to say like 1 or 2 words, and she was the only Latina person that was in our life at the time. And so, yeah, I would say those first, it was about 6 months before we learned English and started losing our Spanish. And so that was pretty quick when you think of it. And then grew up in the United States, and we traveled a lot growing up. Dad's job moved us a lot. There again, in the trainings and the workshop that I do now, I talk about when you do move a lot, and military families and families that are adopting, and to take into consideration when you're a transracial family, having to explain your conspicuous family to the world around you, and having to do that every 3 to 5 years. We moved on an average of every 5 years growing up. So that happened a lot, of us having to explain, no, he's my brother. Yes, they're my parents, and so forth in school, and things like that. So then when I was 18 years old, I barely graduated from high school. We all were very happy that I got a high school diploma, and that was a huge feat. I'm dyslexic. I didn't learn to read until I was 14 years old, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and my folks actually were able to find a school for dyslexics that happened to be attached to my high school. So I got to go to that and learn how to read. So my last 4 years of school, from freshman to high school, were really focused on getting me to read at a 5th grade reading level. And so I was successful in that, graduated from high school, and swore I would never go back to school ever again, because it was so hard to get through the years that I did get through. And then I found snowboarding, and I've always been pretty athletic. And so that was a place that felt right. And and snowboarding was pretty new at the time. We were not in the Olympics yet. This was back in the olden days, like old school, where we're like digging out our own half pipes, if some of you can remember that. So out there in the night before a half pipe race, we were making our own half pipes. So I became a professional snowboarder, and I raced here nationally. Well, first I actually became a snowboard instructor in Vail, Colorado. And then I went to Breckenridge, Colorado, and I joined the snowboard team there, and started racing professionally. And that definitely got my physical itch met, but not the kind of helping back and giving back to my community. I was 18. I knew that I wanted to give back. I knew I had always imagined and envisioned that I would adopt someday. And so I started volunteering during dryland training when I was living in Denver. I would live in the mountains in the winter, and then in the summer I would live in Denver. and I started volunteering for an organization called the Rocky Mountain Adoption Exchange. And they provide support in recruitment for children who have been in the child welfare system and are at risk of aging out of the system, of the foster care system. And that felt right for me. And when I called and found out that they didn't focus on finding children for families, they are, that it wasn't parent centered, but it was child centered, and it being child welfare and it being older children who were at risk of aging out. I felt like I could give back in that. So I went and rolled my sleeves. There's a long story on how I got there. I've been interviewed before, and I feel like maybe some of your listeners have already heard that, but I'm happy to answer that question, is how I decided to choose the organization to give my time to. I was at the time I was able to give a lot of my time in the summer, and because in the summer dryland training was 3 to 4 hours a day, and the rest of the time, and I was actually living at mom and dad's, and they were living in Denver at the time, and so I had about 25 hours a week that I was going into this organization to give my time. So it was important for me to make sure that this organization or agency was in alignment with my ethics. And some people ask me, how did you have ethics in adoption at 18 years old on your radar? And I just did. It was really important to me to give my time to an organization that had ethical practices around birth first parents. And even at that time, that was really clear to me. So I'll just say really quickly what I did was, before deciding on this particular organization to volunteer for, I just want to say, this is in this community. I know that there are some birth first parents in this community, and I do share this openly, and it's not something that I am proud of. And yet at the same time, there is a part of me that I feel like I was very clever at the time. But what I did was, I called all of the adoption agencies and I said that I was pregnant, and I was not. I said that I was pregnant and I wanted to see how these agencies were going to treat me, and that I wasn't willing to give my time to an agency that wasn't going to be kind and give me the resources, or maybe send me to a place other than an adoption agency to get the support that I needed. And so I said that I was pregnant, and that the father of the child was African American, and I was Latina, and the kind of responses that I got were extremely disturbing, as you can imagine. And so there was only one out of all the agencies that I called that said, "Oh, actually, we don't place children for adoption. We actually, here's a list of referrals." Some of them were adoption agencies, and some of them were family preservation. Some of them were, if you're not sure that placing your child for adoption is right for you, here's some places that you could go. So I hung up the phone, I called back, and I said, "Hi, my name's Astrid, and I'd like to volunteer." And so that's how. And it wasn't until years and years and years and years later that I ever actually admitted that I had done that. And I am still friends with the executive director, who's now retired, Dixie Davis, who was working there at the time. And so, yeah, so it was that's kind of what launched me in my career, volunteering there. And then they had asked me if I would be willing to be on a panel, because I was a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. I definitely get that after my father, who is also a storyteller. And so they asked if I would be on a panel and share my experience. And I said, sure. And I sat on a panel, and that kind of, the rest is history. It was, that's where I realized, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And at that point, somebody said, well, that's great, but you probably have to go and get a college, at least an undergraduate degree. And so I did, and I went, but it was on my terms. It was a topic that I was interested and I was excited about. And I had disability services support from disability services. I had readers. I had note takers in all of my classes. Every textbook was read to me aloud, and I got through school with an amazing GPA and very successful. So who knew? If you provide services and make an equal playing field, kids who are not designed to to fit into boxes actually will be really successful.
Well, I was going to ask you the question about what moment, what happened in your life that you decided to give back, and to do that at such a young age, to have that desire at that early age, to commit to that. That's something else, and it says a lot about how you were raised too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was raised, and this isn't just because my parents are in the audience. I want to be really clear. Hold on, I have to plug my thing in, so my head is going to disappear here just for a second. I realized I didn't have that plugged in. Okay, there we go. Hopefully my battery running low. Sign will go off. Okay. So I was raised with a family who did give back and who did volunteer in the community, and we built playgrounds for kids and that kind of thing. And so that was clear. And yet when it came to adoption and my need and my desire to be in community with my adoption constellation, that was really foreign to my family, foreign to, I was adopted in the mid 70s, and that wasn't something we didn't build community for each other back then, unfortunately, unless you were an adoptive parent. And so, and that's, I started off in that space. And that honestly, I did feel that felt right at the time. That was the only space for me to exist in. If you wanted to work in adoptions in the 70s, there was one place for you to go, and that was to become a social worker and place babies for adoption. That was it. Is there a delay in? I'm seeing a delay on my end. There's
We have a little bit of a delay right now.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Let me see. Okay. Yep. Oh, there's still a delay. Okay. I can hear you, Marcie.
Good, because I can hear you clearly. There is a little bit of delay on the screen, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, great.
Okay. So let's talk about Adoption Mosaic. I want to learn all about this. When you started it, how you got the idea. Share that with us.
Yes. So when I graduated from Willamette University here in the Pacific Northwest, I had the opportunity to do a lot of my classes. I did a lot of internships. I did a lot of in the adoption community here locally. And one of the organizations was the Oregon Post-Adoption Resource Center here in Portland. And so they were just starting up, and I was just graduating, and there was a position that was available as a family support specialist at the
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Astrid may have to leave and come back in.
Okay. She having a little problem?
Yep.
It's great when it works, right, everybody? But when it doesn't. Okay.
While we're waiting for her to come back, David, are you handy and want to talk about your next event?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. I'm David Bowl. I have the privilege of co-facilitating a virtual group called Adoptee Paths to Recovery. We meet every other Tuesday. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, October 19th at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific. It's a group for any relinquishee or adoptee or family member who has suffered either directly from addiction or has experienced it in a loved one. And we get together and we talk about the hope and the solution-focused approaches that can be found in recovery, and we invite anyone who thinks they're appropriate for that group to join us. Again, Tuesday evening, October 19th, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, and I will post a link for registration in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, David. And also, while we're waiting, just to let you know, the upcoming happy hour, Jennifer and I will both be out in California at the Concern United Birth Parents Conference. So we will be showing a replay of one of our happy hour episodes on that day. So you can still tune in and watch that. We'll have that scheduled for you, but we will not be live this upcoming Friday, or excuse me, a week from today.
And I have that, the replay link scheduled at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it. It's Nancy Verrier talking about the primal wound.
Yeah, we're going to see the premiere of Reckoning with the Primal Wound, so we thought that that was appropriate to have that, to show that on Friday. A little bit more about Nancy. Okay.
Is she getting back in yet?
I don't see her yet. Oh, there she is.
Yikes. I'm back. Oh my goodness. Whew, that was a little stressful. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. It happens.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes. Well, my apologies.
That's quite right.
Thank you for your understanding. So let's see. So Adoption Mosaic. So I was working at the Oregon Post Adoption Resource Center, and there it was $40 that were trickled down through the federal down to the state. Every state received funding for post-adoption services, and every state got to determine how those dollars were going to be spent. And the state of Oregon decided that we would spend them by creating this center, the Post-Adoption Resource Center, and offer information and referral, indirect services support to adoptive families that had adopted through the child welfare. And that's really important. And the reason why Adoption Mosaic got launched was because we were getting calls from families that were not eligible for ORPARK services, families like my parents who had not adopted through the child welfare system, had adopted private, infant, private, domestic, and when they called, we were supposed to turn them away. At the time, I had a wonderful boss, and who said, basically, I had said to her, like, ethically, I just can't do that. And I have to be able to serve these families as well. And I was taking too many of those calls. And so my boss said, you know what, you can give them services, but we can't log them, and we can't report those. But what we can do, you can give your phone number and your private email, and you can serve those families on your own time. And I said, okay, great, I'll do that. At the beginning, it wasn't a ton of families because we weren't getting the word out to the community. It was very internal. We were receiving the database of families that had adopted and finalized through foster care, through child welfare every month, and those families would get an email, you're now eligible for our services. So we weren't out there advertising or letting the world know about our services. So yeah, long story short, some families started learning, some adoptive parents started learning about Orr Park services, would call, and then I would give them my private number and email, and enough of those families were calling that kitchen table, a couple of us sat down and said, hey, how do we create some programming for those families that are not eligible? And that's really where Adoption Mosaic was created. We started in 2005 as a 501c3 nonprofit, and it was me and 3 adoptive parents, and I was the face of Adoption Mosaic, if you will. I was the one who was doing all the trainings and all of the education that we were offering, and they were the behind the scenes helping out with managing a board and running an organization, getting our 501c3 and all of the, and I know that you all at NAAPs recently have gotten your 501c3, so you know how much work that is. So I had this team of folks that were kind of on the back end doing that. And then we ran Adoption Mosaic for about 10 years as a nonprofit. And my job slowly started becoming more and more administrative and less programming, and managing a board of directors. And I became the executive director, like so many small grassroots organizations do. We have, we sign up for positions that we're like, I'm not trained. That's not my trade. I'm not trained to run a business. I'm not trained to be an entrepreneur. I know that there's a need in the community, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do this. And then I'll do all the things that I have to do to make that successful. And so as the executive director, I found myself doing more tasks that I didn't want to do and less tasks that I really wanted to do. So myself and the board of directors, we agreed after 10 years that we would close the doors, and because we weren't in a position to hire an executive director either. It was a catch-22. So we closed the doors. I also was going through a lot in my life at that time. I just found my birth mother. I was in the middle of getting a divorce and becoming a single mom, and so forth. And so it was kind of regrouping myself was also something that needed to happen. So I retained the name Adoption Mosaic with permission of the rest of the board. Was very amicable, and then with the intention that I would be relaunching as an LLC. So 2 months after the pandemic hit, I was going to wait until this blew over. And somebody wisely said, if any of you have been on or seen our We the Experts Adoptee speaker series, our tech person, Brooke, she is a Zoom wizard. And she said, she was a friend of mine at the time, or a new friend. And she said, we got to get Adoption Mosaic. We got to launch Adoption Mosaic. We're not going to wait. We're not going to wait. We don't know how long this is going to be. And I'm so grateful for that, because Adoption Mosaic is, I think, stronger than it ever has been as far as offering services and being available to our community in a way that we never saw before. And I'm sure NAAP is experiencing the same thing. Having 38 people on a Friday night, I think speaks volumes to the need that we so many of us are isolated and don't have community, and so the online portion of this has made Adoption Mosaic really accessible to so many more people than it would have been. So yeah,
it continues to amaze me that we've kept ours going as long as we have, because COVID did create those opportunities. And, you jumped in on that, and that's when we started at the same time, was what can we offer the community so we can stay connected during COVID, and it just went from there. So yeah, it definitely created opportunities for all of us and a way to stay connected until we could physically see one another at conference. So
yeah. Well, and I will say Adoption Mosaic was very adoptive parent centered when we started, and 15 years ago in 2005. And it was adoptive parent centered because, kind of like, if you look at the progression of my journey as an adoption professional and the work that I do today, is that when I first started, the only place to go was to be a social worker and place babies for adoption. I never did that work, but I was in the industry that was really the only place to be in. And so then that's when I decided to go to school. And then I found the one agency and one organization that was offering post-adoption services. And so I was fortunate to be able to build my career in the post-adoption, which at that time, when I started my working at Orr Park, the professional piece of it was supporting adoption was innovation, right? And it was supporting adoptive parents. It wasn't supporting birth and first parents, and it wasn't supporting adult adoptees. And in fact, our organization, Orr Park, we didn't serve families once their kids turned 18. That the absurdity of that now makes no sense, right? And so it's kind of like the evolution of where we are today is I feel like my career has followed that path. And so when we started Adoption Mosaic, it was very adoptive parent centered, and now it is very adoptee centered, adult adoptee and youth. I think it's always been youth adoptee centered, but we've never had the programming that we have now for adults. And so that piece feels really good.
And the speaker series, you want to talk a little bit more detailed about that, like how often that's offered and where people can attend?
Yeah, sure. So our adoptee speaker series, it's called We the Experts Adoptee Speaker Series, and it's monthly. It's the second Saturday of every month. It is from 10 to 12 Pacific Standard Time, and it is panels. Every month we pick a topic that is an adoptive parent, an adoptee centered topic, and we have an ally quarterly. We bring in non-adoptees, but the people who support us, and bring them in to have a discussion. The very first ally series that we did was we're calling them second generation adoptees. My daughter is like I said, I think she's in the audience, but she when she was little, as I said in my introduction, I talk about being immigrated to this country. Her father is immigrated here from Italy, and so neither one of us were born in the United States, and Maya was the first in our family to be born here. And so as far as she very much identifies with being a second generation in the US. And so she had, because she grew up in the work that I do, she identifies, and she asked, well, aren't I a second generation adoptee? And I said, I guess that makes sense to me. She's not an adopted person. And there's, they actually, the panel themselves had a whole discussion. So they were all second gen adoptees, and they had a discussion about if that's the right term, and that maybe it's not the right term, and that we're going to be hosting a meeting. So if any of you know or have, Joni's daughter was interested in this topic as well. But if any of you have, your adult children who have never really been given a space to talk about what it means to be raised by us adoptees, then this panel was a discussion. When the first time, just watching them like interact with each other and be in community with each other was really wonderful. All of our panels offer that. All of the panels are designed to build community within the panel itself. I don't know how many panels any of your guests have been on, or any of your the audience members have been on, but historically we have really, what's the word? We haven't done a good job in supporting our adoptee panelists in conferences, at adoption agencies, and ethical practice around panel work is something that we take great pride in, and that we are doing this. You don't meet the panelists, you don't meet the other panelists for the first time on the panel. You meet them in you know, days or weeks before, and you get to know them. Then you sit on a panel and you build community, and we're modeling what building community looks like. And so the other thing that's really unique about our panel work is that it is adoptee centered space, and we ask every non-adoptee to sign a waiver. And this is a waiver of understanding that this is an adoptee centered space, and we ask them to not engage in the chat. We ask them not to engage verbally with questions, and they get to be flies on the wall. And interestingly, we have not gotten any pushback on that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I kind of expected, like, yeah, I'm up for it. I'm up for somebody saying that's not fair. I don't like that. And I was ready to say, okay, I hear you. I understand that you don't like that. And we haven't been given enough spaces, us adoptees, that are adoptee centered spaces where, and yet I also strongly believe that our extended community needs to hear our stories, needs to hear our experiences, and that needs to be centered around us. And so I borrowed that model from some of the BIPOC events that I've been to, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities that I've attended, where there was an event that I went to, an online event actually, and they had all the non-BIPOC folks sign a waiver that you are here as a visitor, and we're actually not asking you to engage at all. And so I said, wait a second, we could do something like that for the adoptee community. So we do that at our panels, which feels really good. And we have about anywhere between around 70%, maybe 75% of our community that attend these are adoptees, and 25 to 30% are adoptive parents, or non-adoptees, I should say, spouses of, friends, partners of, children of, so forth.
Do you have any upcoming programs in the works, any special events coming up?
Yep. So our next panel is on November 13th. Hold on, I have to look at my calendar. Yes, no, second Saturday. And it is our speaker series, and the topic is adoptees who adopted. And that is, to me, an extremely vulnerable community, extremely important that we hear from them. I am super curious to hear from them. I always thought that I was going to adopt until I started doing this work, and then I realized that wasn't something that I would be able to that I wanted to do for multiple reasons. And so we are going to have a panel discussion of 4 adoptees who have made that decision to adopt. And these are going to be 4 adoptees who have thought deeply about that. And so I'm excited for that. Then that's November. In December, we have 2 We the Experts, and one is going to be an ally series, and that is going to be the ally series is going to be the partners of. So the spouses or partners of us adoptees, and they're going to be sharing what it's like to be partnered or married to us. And so I think that's going to be an interesting and fun, well, maybe not super fun, but I think it'll be, I'm single. So for me, I'm like, yeah, say whatever you got to say. It's, so, but that'll be an interesting conversation because, you know, as an adopted person who was married, my adoption, and interestingly, I'm going to full circle here in a minute, but years and years ago, Shalise, who is in the audience, she presented me with an article. She had said, you know, I read an article and a statistic that those of us who go into reunion when we are partnered are 50 times more likely to get separated or divorced after a reunion happens. And it was an anecdotal study. Shalise and I have not been able to find it since, but she had read it somewhere. And I remember I was married at the time. I was not in reunion at the time. And I said to myself, you know, that's interesting. That would probably, if I was in reunion, that would probably not happen to me. I was pretty confident that that's not something that would happen to me. And sure enough, 3 years after I found our birth mother, me and my sister's birth mom, my now ex-husband and I were in the middle of getting a divorce. And was it because of the reunion? No. Was it because I was learning about who I was and more about my journey and discovering things about my history for those first 4 years? Was it a part of that? Absolutely. And becoming aware of those things I have no doubt was probably part of that. So we're going to be talking to spouses of and partners of adoptees in December and as well. And then we have I will say that one program I'm really excited about is our program for seasoned parents. And seasoned parents, meaning like the Norm and Chris's that are my parents, who we are hearing from. I'm also a consultant within Adoption Mosaic. We offer consultations. I'm not a therapist. But helping an adoptee or an adoptive parent, anybody in the adoption constellation kind of get on track and find their community and find resources is something that we do. The piece that we're seeing more and more is adults, adoptees who are coming to us and saying, I don't know how to talk to my parents about some of the things that I'm really needing to talk to them about. Maybe an example is I'm considering or thinking about searching, and I don't know how to have a conversation. We've never talked about adoption in my family, and they're not people who are professionals or people whose lives are dripping with adoption or and have the language. They're not adoption fluent. They and neither are their parents. So what does that look like? So we created a program. I am partnering with an adoptive parent in the community, and she and I are writing curriculum on how do you have those conversations with your parents? Because at the end of the day, I don't believe us adoptees should be carrying the burden of talking to our parents about all of these things without language and support. And it can be so sticky and so emotional for us. And I think that we are expected to be the people who bridge those conversations way far too often. And I don't think that's fair. So my parents, because they adopted me and I do the work that I do, they get to be my guinea pigs, and they've signed up for it beautifully, I must say. I will say to my parents, hey, could you attend this workshop? And okay, they probably can assume that this is what's happened, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. And so I have not told them this, but I basically like, maybe you want to just attend this so I can have somebody who can give me feedback on what did you like about this and what didn't you? But a big part of it was, I just want to know these things about you. And I want to know why you adopted us. Why did you go to a country that you didn't speak the language? Why did you, and ask those really hard questions. And that I've been terrified, I think most of my life, many of us adoptees are terrified that those answers to those questions, or just asking those questions, will alienate us in a way that our parents won't be in community, or won't want to, will get angry that we ask these questions. And so, yeah, and I think we deserve the answers to every single hard question we have about our adoptions. Our parents owe that to us. I feel that they owe it to us.
Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and open it up to some questions and comments. I know we're getting a lot of comments in the chat room, and so if anybody would like to raise their virtual hand or have a question, you're welcome to take yourself off of mute. Let's see here.
Please do ask questions.
Yeah, well, there's David's comment that just came in. That was when I attempted to have a conversation with my adoptive mother. My sister, who was a bio daughter of my adoptive parents, told me to leave our mother the hell alone. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, David.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It was difficult at the time. I since processed it, but this is exactly what you're talking about, Astrid. This is what we're up against. And the very reason you're doing that research and putting together that program to help people through these difficult times, I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. And, we're looking at right now, it's one of the things that's really interesting is that Shalise and I are getting emails from people who say, I don't have community. And so we are starting somebody wants to take the lead on creating a Children of Adoptees group and start that. There's another person who is birth siblings of adoptees, and they're wanting to start a group. So they're reaching out to us. So there's just so much work ahead of us. I guess it's job security for us, David. And would I love to be out of a job? Absolutely. And in my lifetime, that is not going to happen, unfortunately.
Astrid, I've got a direct message from an attendee asking, let's see, if you have ever had a panel with adopted at 4 versus a primal wound adopted at birth. Have you ever done a panel in that way?
You mean a panel that was for older adoptees who were adopted at an older age?
Yes.
That's it. No, we have not done that particular panel yet, but we love those suggestions, and we will absolutely take that into consideration. We have just, Shalise and I solidified our 2022 panel, our panels. So we have, let's see, 12, 14, 15, 16. So our 16 panels for 2022 have already been done, but we are always looking for panel ideas for the future. So yeah, and that would be a great panel.
Now, also another one would be kept siblings.
Yeah, siblings who were parented by yeah.
Why did you relinquished me, but you kept my sister, or you kept my brother?
Right. And so that, yeah. So we just did a screening. I believe that you all have Rebecca with Reckoning with Primal Wound. Have you had her on yet?
No, she has not been on yet.
Okay. I'm sure, I hope that you do have her. She is fabulous. And she did the documentary, Reckoning with the Primal Wound, that has been, we did 2 screenings now, one in person in my backyard and one online. And so for the online one, her best friend who's in the documentary, and her birth sister, who her birth mother parented, both were on the panel discussing. And so they actually, the birth sister, and one other person in the audience we connected the 2 of them, and they are wanting to host something through Adoption Mosaic, that is the siblings that were not adopted out. And what does reunion, I mean, all the complexities that come with that, right?
There's just so many scenarios.
Right.
There's just so many.
Yeah.
Okay, we have questions from the audience.
Great.
Anybody? Let's go ahead. Let's see here. I'm scrolling back through the chat room too. See if we've missed anything here.
I think Norman, Chris have a question.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, cutie. So my question is one that, of course, we talk about adoption maybe more than most people do, but what we discover is we've moved to a new neighborhood within the last 4 or 5 years. But with COVID, we spend more time with our neighbors, like a lot of people do. And suddenly, kind of around the corner, people say, oh, I have an adopted child, but we have the hardest time talking. And this has happened so many times. And I give them information and things to talk about. But do you have any things coming up, or we have a subscription, so lots of things have been recorded in the past. Maybe there's one from the past that I could perhaps watch with them and be there to answer questions and start a conversation.
Okay, so that's a great question, Mom. And I will say that know your audience. It is so important to know your audience, right? To know the person that you're talking to. So David, your example of your sister, I would address her very, very differently than the neighbor who's knocking on my mom's door saying, oh, I have an adopted kid too. How should we talk? Right? That's so different in the way we talk to them. And so I think that piece is really important. If you feel that it is somebody who is ready to dive in, I think watching one of the We the Experts is a great way. And we talk a lot about that with folks who are wanting to consider having conversations with their parents or even their adult children. I have adopted parents that I work with who are trying to navigate how to have conversation with their adult children. And I like to say, focusing on somebody other than the 2 people you're talking with is probably the best way to go about it. So watching something like the We the Experts. And so I would say it would depend if they are somebody who has older children. We have the adoptive parents, the seasoned adoptive parents panel. If they are younger parents, and we have a birth mother first parent panel that we did, the siblings panel. There's just so many there. So we have over 24 panels that we have recorded, and you can purchase them through our website. Excuse me, not through our website, through a link. It's our previously recorded link. And yeah, watching them in community with somebody, and you being able to sit there, Mom, because you are so well involved in this community, and being able to sit with them and give them more resources, I think is really important too. So thank you. for the
I think it
question.
will be for them too. I really do. They're, at a bypass, nobody wants to talk about it. So
Mm,
that's why I'm concerned for them, and I don't want to say, well, you just have to do more. It's a place to start, I hope.
yeah, yeah.
Do you have any one of your past ones, or that you think would be good to talk with them?
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk, Mom? And
Okay.
if you and you tell me a little bit more about who they are, and like, are they older parents? Are they seasoned parents? Are they younger parents? And so that, and
They're
a
our
little bit
age,
more.
so they've got kid,
Young.
yeah, they're very young.
Yeah.
At 77.
You know what? And if they're grandparents of, I think watching the one that Maya was on is a really good one, because then you could say,
Yes,
oh,
it
that's our
is.
granddaughter, and this is what it looks like when a child is in community from the very beginning, and this is what it looks like when a child is comfortable talking about adoption. And so I think all of those panelists represent that, so maybe that would be a good one.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I'll look through for you, with you maybe, because this guy is not married and doesn't want to talk about adoption. That's where he is.
Okay.
So just
okay, yeah.
ignore,
Okay.
right?
Yep. We'll
Where-
chat for sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back in the comments. Let's see.
Oh, it looks
Peter.
like Shalice and Jennifer had a question.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Okay.
no, that's okay. Their hands were, yeah.
Shalice or Jennifer is next.
Yeah, I can go. This is Jennifer. I had a question about your sibling. Are they in the community and active and involved, or have they gone the other direction?
Mm. So my sister, she was the older one of the two of us. So she was the 6-year-old. I was the 4.5-year-old. And she is not in, I think her only adopted friend is me. And she has a very different experience. She was older, so she has more memories and more experiences with our mother and our birth mother, first mother. And so, yeah, she's this isn't something that is something that she wants to explore any more than she explores in her own personal life.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jennifer, that I think that is one of the things that I have navigated, and I'm sure any of you who have siblings have had to navigate, that unless your sibling happens to think exactly the way you do, chances are you're navigating hard conversations. That for us, it was, I wanted to search probably from the day I can remember. I've always wanted to be in reunion. I've always wanted to search, and my sister has never wanted. And so when I was, I want to say in my mid-20s, I said to her that I wanted to search, and she said, I support you. I love you. I want you to do what's right for you, and I can't join you. I can't be a part of that. And that was really hard. So
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your answer.
yeah. Shalice.
Okay, Shalice.
Hi, I'm Shalice. I also work at Adoption Mosaic. I do have a question about, earlier we were talking about launching Adoption Mosaic and being online and people really needing community. And I feel like this might be a good place to kind of just discuss or unpack like how challenging engaging other adoptees can be, especially in an online environment. And with the prevalence of cancel culture and what do you find most challenging, and how do you um, what do you do to hold space and embrace people who are at a very vulnerable point in the spectrum on their experience?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I've been doing this for so long, I guess I'm 30 plus years, which feels like if you had asked me that if I would be in the same field or doing this similar work 30 years later, I probably would have said no. I would say I don't know that I would have been able to build Adoption Mosaic the way I have built it in today's arena, if that makes sense. Because when I was 18, I was so vulnerable. It was so emotional. It was so personal, all of those things. And to have that online in the way, because I did need a space, I needed a place to be able to be angry and vent and have my community and not have that be held against me for the rest of my career. And I'm seeing that happen in online. I'm rarely online other than to tell people about Adoption Mosaic stuff or tell people about other organizations stuff. And I will share my opinions about adoption and about my professional opinions. And when it's almost like it's not personal anymore, which seems really, because of course it is personal because this is the work I'm doing. But I had to find really my own healing in order for myself and my people. And Shalise, you're one of those people, right? I've got people on here who are some of those people, Joni and Nomi, and some of these people who I get to have my online conversation with. And I do that, and that's really important. But I don't know if I had been part of this young culture where we do that online with each other, that people that we've never met with, or people that we don't have any other relationship with outside of our adoption connection. I'm not sure that I would have been able to contain that in a healthy way. And so how I manage it now is either I don't take it personal, or when I do take it personal, I have the people in my life who know how to ground me, and the people who know how to say, Astrid, step away from your computer. This isn't about you. You know that. You can't take care of everybody. That's not your job. You're doing great work. And if I didn't have those people in my life, I think I would have stopped doing this work as soon as it all got online. I mean, yeah. So community, and that's one of the reasons that building community is so critical and so important for me, in that I'm not going to pretend Adoption Mosaic is building community that is right for everybody. And we're not. There are people who won't find their space, or won't find their people within our community, but they deserve community. They deserve a place to be able to unpack and find people that they can do this with. So how do I help them find that? Because I have to have some healthy boundaries for myself, for my organization, for the people that I serve, and protection and loyalty around emotions is really important to me as well.
Great, thank you. David, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Marcie. Hi again, Astrid. I have a question, and I don't know if you've done this work or not, so I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm wondering if you've either consulted or perhaps done an Ask the Experts group on religious identity. And what prompts that question is something that I put in the chat box. I have a friend who was adopted at birth by a Jewish family, and she later found out through researching biofamily that she was not in fact Jewish. She explored her religious roots and decided to get baptized, but she's afraid to tell anybody. The biofamily, the adoptive family, even some friends, she's reluctant to tell. So I'm wondering if you've done any panels on that, or if you've done any consulting on that.
Yes. Yes. Great question. So our December panel is last year was our first December panel, and we did it on adoptees and religion. And it was a heavy Christian. All the panelists were of a Christian religion or atheist, but were raised in Christian families. And we heard back from our community. We got some feedback that said, hey, where are some of the other religions? And in particular, there were quite a few Jewish adoptees that either found out that they were Jewish through reunion, or they were Jewish at birth, and then were adopted into a non-Jewish family, or vice versa. And so we actually, this December, we decided that we're going to do a panel just on the adoptees and their identifying with the Jewish religion. So I encourage your client, your friends, this person to attend that one. And I think that it will speak volumes to lots of people, regardless of whether they're Jewish or not. And religion and identity, this is a really interesting thing. So I'll just share a little bit of my personal experience around this. So I was raised, mom and dad are atheists, agnostic, and so I wasn't raised in traditional religious family in any way, shape, or form. And so then I found my birth mother in Colombia, and her grief around the fact that we were not raised in a Catholic family was, she said, I didn't even know that when I thought about reuniting with my girls, it didn't even dawn on me that you were not, that you didn't believe in God, or that you didn't go to church, or that you didn't, and she asked, early in our reunion, she would say to me, can we pray together? And I would say, no, we can't pray together. That's not my culture. That doesn't feel right. That feels like I would, I don't even know what that means. She would say to me things like, please say to me, and may God be with you, at the end of our conversations. And I would say, I can't say that. That wouldn't be right for me to say that. Absolutely not. And she had a lot of angst and a lot of sadness around that. So much so where when I went and visited her, she said, will you come to church with me? And that felt like I wasn't crossing my own beliefs, or like going and sitting with her and experiencing that. That felt like a okay thing for me to do personally. So I did. And I saw how happy that made her. And I don't say, may God be with you at the end of the conversations, but I just, the fact that religion is so important to her, and so something that she's worried that I'm not going to go to heaven. She's worried that I'm not going to be saved. Like, she has these deep, deep worries. And as somebody who was raised without organized religion, I don't know how to sit with that. I don't know how to balance that. I don't know how to be there for her and love her through that, and hold my own values, my own religious values. Right. And yeah, so I'm navigating that myself. It's a great question.
That was a great question. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back through. Let's see. Do you have anybody else's hand up? Okay, we have a few more minutes for some more questions if anybody has one. Let's see here.
I'm reading through the comments as well.
Are you? Okay.
I'm really bad at multitasking. And so reading through the comments and talking to somebody is not something I'm very good at.
Yeah, Lynn says she was too frozen to tell her adoptive mom and had a reunion with her birth mother So she asked her husband to tell her. She took the chicken way out. Paige says her mom was cool. Her adoptive dad was not, but he came around over time. And then Peter says he was not able to have those conversations with his adoptive parents because he discovered adoption status at 59. They were too old and frail, not interested in how it affected him. And that made him angry. But he did discover that if it had happened 10 years before, it could have been a different story. So
that's something that I think about is, you know, I have my parents, my daughter, I have this amazing community, and sometimes there's this feeling of here I'm working in this field where I know a lot of people don't have those parents who will come to these workshops or who will dive in and have these conversations. And I just want to tell everybody, like, I want to remind everybody that I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been in this work doing this for 30 years. It did not happen overnight. My parents and I have gone through some really, really hard times when it came to race, talking about race and talking about adoption and talking about that how we see the world differently, or how they joined the adoption constellation with blinders on, and me pushing back and saying, but that's, I have empathy for you for that. I hear that you didn't have the resources and all of this, and I deserve this, and this. And I happen to be that kid who says, this is what I need from you. And I don't think that everybody should have to be that way in order to get the support from their family to do that. And I guess it's just, there's a part of me that feels worried that I'm sending a message that, oh, just go talk to your parents. It should be fine. Like, just do it, right? Without understanding, like, Shalise and I talk about this all the time. We deserve to not have to worry that the things that we need from our parents might alienate us to the point where our parents disown us, or our parents won't be in community with us. And that is a real feeling. That is like, that needs to be validated, that needs to be heard, that needs to be said. And so I'm not suggesting that everybody go home and pick up the phone and talk to their adoptive parents, because healthy boundaries and knowing that your parents are not people that you could talk to, whether they're your birth family, whether they're your adoptive family, whoever they are, is absolutely needs to be, we need to hold space for that. And this is my parents being in the audience and my daughter being here is 30 years of dedication to this work. And I don't think any adoptee should ever have to say, I'm going to dedicate 30 years of my life in order for me to have my parents in the audience of, I hope I'm making sense around that.
great. Thank you. Oh, okay. Peter, do you have a question?
You're on mute. We can't hear you. No. Maybe you can type it in the chat. I hear a background noise, but I can't hear your voice. I'm not the only one, right?
Nope, can't hear you, Peter.
Okay. Sorry. I'd love to know what your question is if you want to put it in the chat. Oh, okay.
Okay. It might be your volume. You might have accidentally muted your volume. I do that all the time.
Oh, right. Like on your
Yes.
keyboard.
Yeah, if you
right?
just look on your keyboard, you might have muted yourself on the volume.
Yes, that definitely happens.
Okay.
If I don't know if Shalice put this in there, but if there are adoptees here who are interested in maybe being a panelist in the future for our We the Experts adoptee speaker series, we have a process, and the process is that you fill out this Google form, and it basically asks, that has check boxes of 50 or more categories that you might be interested in sharing on, and you fill that out, and then you meet with our adoptee outreach coordinator, who her name is Jennifer Poole, and then she will kind of do an informational interview, if you will, and then she helps to kind of fill in the calendar for us of like, oh, I think we should pick this person or talk to this person about this panel. And so she helps coordinate all of that. And then if we do find a panel that's a good match, then you meet with me and the other panelists, and then we get you on a panel. And actually, Jennifer is here, Jennifer Poole, and she just turned her camera on. So and Adoption Mosaic, I'm really proud of. Like, we also are an all adoptee centered and adoptee led organization. So everybody who is running programs, and I do have 2 adoptive parents that partner with me to do trainings that I co-train with. And then everybody who's involved in the organization are adoptees. So that feels really good and that wouldn't have happened 30 years ago.
Okay. Well, we're winding down the hour, and I just want to, on behalf of NAAP, I'd like to thank you once again for joining us for this episode, this happy hour episode. We've really appreciated you joining us this evening. And Shalice, thank you for placing those links in the chat room for others to see, so they can follow Astrid on Instagram and join this, possibly the speaker series and Adoption Mosaic. So I did get one more direct message. I want to end it with one question here.
Okay.
Someone sent me a message and asked if what your birth name was. Was it different?
Great question. That was one thing. My parents had been suggested to change our names, and they did not. So my name is Astrid in Colombia and Astrid in the United States. And I will just say I'm pretty a stickler with it being pronounced Astrid, not Astrid. And sometimes people say that's how we know the difference of the people who are really close to you and the people who don't know you super well. I grew up on the East Coast mostly, and that heavy New York accent of people calling me Astrid was something that I changed the pronunciation when I was younger, and I have stuck with that. But if you can pronounce my name and roll the R's and you say Astrid, that's great. But mostly it's just Astrid. So, and my sister's name was not changed either.
Okay, and then we have a closing comment here from one of our attendees. It says, from Bruce, and he says, this work is so important. It never, ever felt safe enough for me to ask questions or even a single question of my parents. It's really empowering to hear you say we deserve that conversation and shouldn't and shouldn't bear the responsibility for starting it.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you for that, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Marcie, I also just want to say the work that you all are doing, and seeing how you guys have stuck with the weekly. Shalice and I, we get exhausted doing it monthly, and the fact that you all are pulling this off weekly is, and your commitment to this work and to creating space for our community is so important. And I am really, really glad that you all are here and that you're doing this work, and let us know how we can continue to support
Absolutely.
you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't believe we have any closing comments, do we, Jen? I think we've covered everything already earlier. Did we forget anything? I don't think so.
Nope,
Reminder-
just reminder, no happy hour. Next week, we're doing a replay. So it will be on our Facebook page at 6 p.m. There's a link to it, or you can go to our YouTube channel at any time and watch all the past episodes.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye.